we're going to do it together. We have to unify, put our petty differences aside, who's more powerful, who has the information, and let's work together in lockstep. You, the people, your stories are fascinating, they're real, they're organic, and they're the truth.
Right now with Ann Vandersteel. Good evening and welcome to Right Now with Ann Vandersteel. 60 minutes of hard-hitting headline truths and personal impact stories. As always, all signal and zero noise tonight. This is my last nightly news broadcast. Moving into a new phase, going to be doing some news magazines and documentaries. And yes, I will still be partnered with Brighteon TV. It has been an extraordinary ride. I want to send my love and thanks to Hannah, my incredible producer who's made the show look beautiful night after night, and Bob Denny, the executive producer for Brighteon Studios. I appreciate the work you've done, and I look forward to the future collaboration. Also, we're going to get into tonight the federal government. They're out of control. That's right. The Bureau of Land Management is a prime example. One man who is a fourth-generation Utahn has stood up to the feds, paid the price, and continues to serve. His name is Phil Lyman. He's a former county commissioner, a current House representative, and candidate for governor. He stops by. And we the people, we are mobilizing, and so is our military. Commander Robert Greene Jr. is still serving and is holding his brass as well as subordinates accountable with his signature on the Declaration of Military Accountability. He joins me to discuss what's happening with that process, as well as a review of his new book, Defending the Constitution Behind Enemy Lines, a story of hope for those who love liberty. This has all been brought to you by the Satellite Phone Store. Head on over to Satellite Phone Store at sat123.com to get your backup emergency communications and power supplies. And of course, our great partner at lightsoutbeef.com, for whom I will still be working. They are the folks providing you delicious beef that has been freeze-dried. These cows have never been injected with that god-awful mRNA. Get on over there, lightsoutbeef.com. We'll be right back after a few messages from Brighteon.
To celebrate the new year, we're having the biggest sale ever on overstock clearance and brand new products. For example, save 60% on our Goose Down comforters, the best comforters ever. They go perfectly with our MyPillow bed sheets and duvet covers. Save 25% on our brand new kitchen towels. They're made with the same technology as our famous My Towels. Our initial quantities are extremely low, so get them now before they go. Our seasonal flannel sheets are finally in. You save up to 50% and they sell out fast every year, so order now. They're truly the best flannel sheets you'll ever sleep on. Or save up to 80% on all our clearance items. And this is where it gets even better. For a limited time, your entire order ships absolutely free. So go to mypillow.com or call the number on your screen. Use that promo code to get deep discounts on all MyPillow products. And for a limited time, your order ships absolutely free.
Many of you have been asking, where am I getting the energy from? Where is the glow coming from? What's changed with your hair and skin? Well, simply in the last month, I started taking a product, C60 Evo. If you go to c60evo.com/Ann Vandersteel, you too can get radiant energy, mental focus with C60 Evo's ESS 60. What is it? That is pure C60. Get that increased flexibility, immunity, and longevity. And guess what, folks? It's not only for people too. You can get some for your pets. My animals are on it now. And that's right, I'm having trouble keeping up with Vegas, my dog, who I like to go on long walks with in the morning. He is battling back on the heat down here with his C60 Evo as well. Go to c60evo.com/Ann Vandersteel and try their delicious oils that you can eat and add into salads or put on your food, and also incredible facial serums and creams that are making a massive difference in the texture and feel of my skin. c60evo.com/Ann Vandersteel. Phil, good evening. Thank you so much for joining me here on Right Now. It looks like you're going to have a very interesting race for governor, seating from where you are and your family history. So I want to run through that, but congratulations on making that big decision to challenge the incumbent for the gubernatorial position.
Yeah, it's been a process, and I'm glad to be doing it. It's great to be on the show, and thank you.
Yeah, so let's go back a little bit. Let's talk family history, because you have quite a history in the town from where you are, and your family has been there for quite some time. So this isn't just you, politics as usual, trying to climb the ladder, the corporate ladder of politics, if you will, and profit along the way. This actually means something to you.
Yeah, so I'm from Blanding, Utah, and my race is not at all about Blanding, Utah, but I'm always glad when I find people who feel committed to the people that went before them, and I certainly do, and to the people that have come after me, my family, and got a couple of my kids that have moved back to Blanding, both doctors and doing great things, and we wherever we're at, we want to make it better, and I'm from Utah first and foremost, all parts of the state, and my progenitors came here, so very committed to the principles of statehood and the Constitution that keeps that preserves the blessings of liberty and that's the function of government. So all of those things just really resonate with me, and I want to see a governor that respects those things.
Sounds reasonable to me. After all, that is a position of public service, right? You are working for the people, and you are supposed to take your direction from the people. You have been someone who has actually listened to the people, and you've stood with the people in the past, and you paid the price for doing so. Let's talk about Operations Cerberus and what that was about, and how it resulted in your having to be pardoned by President Trump.
Yeah, so Cerberus is the three-headed dog from the underworld, and BLM named their operation. When I say BLM, I mean Bureau of Land Management in this situation. So Bureau of Land Management did what they called Operation Cerberus Action, and it was under the guise of protecting artifacts, but it was really about locking up the Bears Ears National Monument and other areas under the conservation lands rule that the BLM has, really to stop extraction, lock up minerals, uranium, rare earth minerals, those types of things. So Blanding just happens to be at the epicenter of uranium, and out in the middle of this public lands county. We're 8% private property, and the rest is publicly owned. So it's a lot of public land. And Cerberus Action really was, looking back now with hindsight, it was to create a crisis that only the government could be the solution to, which is such a pattern that we see. And that's what they did in San Juan County, created this crisis, damaged a lot of families, and then came in as if they were going to save the day. And in the meantime, they just happened to lock up all the minerals.
Isn't that interesting? And these are minerals right now that are quite precious. They're worth a lot of money. And it seems to me that the government is using the idea that they're here to protect a certain species of, whether it's frogs, bugs, birds, ants, whatever. But really what it is they're after are the minerals. And uranium-1 was clearly a scandal under Hillary Clinton that seemingly won't go away, although it seems to have the fire snuffed at the moment with the current regime in power. But I do believe there is a reckoning coming, and it's because of individuals like yourself that are running for such important positions as, basically the president of a state, as the governor. You are the chief cook and bottle washer should you attain that position. And it's going to prove quite troubling for the federal government. Can we just talk about that? If you were to become governor, what that would mean to the uranium-1 scandal?
Well, and I'll also say it's thanks to people like you that are willing to keep talking about it. Media seems to somehow be coerced out of talking about things that are really important. I had a front row seat to the uranium-1 deal because I was working with uranium-1, the executives of uranium-1, trying to prevent the Obama moratorium on uranium extraction. They showed up to one of the meetings in late 2011 and said, well, we're not going to be coming anymore. We sold. And I said, you sold? And they said, yeah, we sold to Russia. And I said, that's not that doesn't make sense. And they said, no, we sold to Russia and Hillary Clinton brokered the deal. And then you're like, okay, we're living in fantasy world here. But and it took, that was in 2011. It took about 4 years before America really woke up to the fact that Russia had purchased the United States strategic uranium reserves with Uranium One. And so we were saying that from the beginning. And now when you see these natural asset corporations rolling out, it's like, oh, you can see what the plan was from the beginning. And as you start to see it, sometimes it's too late to go back and say, wait, if we had known that that's what the agenda was, we would have stopped it at the beginning. But we didn't. And now we're in that situation where we've got this new national monument in Arizona, in Arizona that locks up we call it the Beatnik monument that locks up 1 million acres. And we're buying uranium from Russia and Kazakhstan and Canada and other places for our U.S. supply currently. And I guess, and I'm sorry, to come back to the governor's role, a governor of the state of Utah should do more than cow down to the president or Congress or anyone else. They need to stand up and say, this is a state, this is Utah. That boundary that defines the state of Utah meant something in 1896. It means something now, and we're not going to shut down our coal-fired power plants. We're not going to quit driving on roads. We're not going to stay off of the land in our own state just because somebody's decided that environmental conservation is more important than people.
Right. Well, you served admirably as the county commissioner for 7 years. You fought the good fight. You paid the price, were convicted, mostly because the FBI, which was the goon squad for the federal government, really stole the land from the people of Utah, most notably even the American Indians that were there. And under President Trump, there was a proclamation issued on December 4th of 2017, reducing that monument size that was declared by the federal government by 85%. Down to 200,876 acres. That was unprecedented at the time for a Bureau of Land Management, federally owned, and managed property to be reduced and given back. Unfortunately, Joe Biden and his regime have restored that territory that was removed by President Trump back in October of 2021. So again, the federal government is still back to the land grab. How, as governor, can you battle that?
Well, I will say it was such a victory for my little community. We saw and I'll answer the question, but we saw this coming. We knew that what the Obama administration had planned. Our own Utah delegation in DC were saying, you need to do this public lands initiative, basically lock up all this land from extraction. It's federal land anyway, and that's what I told Congressman Chaffetz. I said, it's federal land, don't pretend like we have much say in it. But we made a large amount of commotion about the Bears Ears National Monument when the Obama administration was in. And when Trump got in, not only did he reduce the Bears Ears Monument due to that commotion, but he also reduced the Grand Staircase Monument, which was really significant. So we had 4 years to go in and put in some really important infrastructure, water wells for the cows, things like that. So even though the monuments were restored, we got some wells in place that deliver water to a really arid climate. What a governor could do in that situation is stand up from the very beginning to just say we're not going to do this. For example, on the opposite side of that, when Joe Biden came out and designated the Arizona monument, the following day, FBI rolled into Provo, Utah, killed Craig Robertson in his home, a 75-year-old guy that was tweeting some nasty things. But where's the due process on that? It was a show of force because it made some threats on President Biden. So kills one of our citizens, designates a monument that locks up the uranium that feeds the mill just south of my hometown, and then comes to the airport to meet Governor Cox, and they take some goofy selfies together. They kind of embrace, and it's just like a little party going on there. And I would have preferred a governor to say, you've got some explaining to do. Let's talk about this. What's going on? Right. Instead, Governor Cox joined the Civilian Climate Corps. One of the 5 governors that joined, and one of them was a Republican, Governor Cox. The rest were Democrats, and all on board with the Paris Climate Accord. Everything with the Biden administration, he's been lockstep, and it's troubling. Not because it's Biden, and not because it's partisan, but because it's taking away statehood.
Well, again, this is what the legislative democracy and the 10 square miles that I call the district of corruption would like us all to devolve into. They want to dissolve the republic. I think they've done a pretty good job of not recognizing the Constitution and that we, the people, stand on, and dragging us into their courts of commerce and treating us like corporate citizens with mandates, rules, codes, and statutes that don't apply to people. That certainly applies to their federal corporation they've got going on. But there is more. So you spent 10 days in jail back in 2014 based on what actually happened and the Recapture Canyon protest that you were a part of as a county commissioner. I'm sorry, you were not in jail, federal prison, excuse me. You had to pay $97,000 in restitution. I have to ask, because I know people that are sitting in the gulags right now, languishing for exercising their First Amendment right. I speak to them almost daily on the phone from prison, do shows with these incredible patriots. Did that spur you to run for the Utah State House of Representatives? Absolutely.
Yeah, in fact, I was not a county commissioner when my own town was raided in 2009. I was just a mild-mannered accountant, trying to make a difference in my community, and I didn't see the response from the commissioners or the sheriff or the governor or anybody. So I thought, this isn't right. I'm going to run for county commissioner. Then I saw the same thing happen through, all of my case, and the seat for the House opened up about then, and I saw a chance to run for that. And where I come from, it's people respect someone who stands up to the Bureau of Land Management because they know kind of what they are. And so I got elected fairly easily to that first term, and then I've been there for 5 years. And then watching the same administrative state at the federal level and how it trickles down through our associations and nonprofit organizations and the governor's office to affect legislation in Utah, that then it really affects the people negatively. And that's why I'm running for governor.
Side monetary question. There are 20 states currently right now that are looking into the Citizens for Sound Money or exploring their own constitutional gold-backed currency. I live in Florida. Florida actually is out in front on this, and we look to perhaps even having legislation signed by July of this year by Governor DeSantis to actually have our own gold depository, whether we build it here or, in fact, share space with the Texas Gold Depository. That remains to be seen, but it's all under negotiation. And I know Utah is one of the states that's also considering that. What is your position with that, especially since you're such a mineral-rich state and the federal government clearly wants their mitts into all the riches and the minerals that Utah has, necessarily depriving your state citizens from that wealth?
Well, we're blessed in Utah, number one, with a lot of mineral wealth, copper and gold and silver and everything else you can imagine. We're also blessed with a really great state treasurer, Marlo Oaks, and he's a friend of mine. We've talked about some of these things. We talk about natural asset companies and the threat that those are presenting to us, ESG and all those things. And I was really thrilled when he explained to me his concept of a gold-backed system in Utah, that you could actually pay your taxes with gold, and that we would have a repository in the state of Utah. And that's what states are supposed to do. They're supposed to step in and say, hey, we see a threat. And right now the threat is the federal government and the policies that they're instituting, being influenced by the NGOs and these things. So a state that doesn't do that is just putting their head in the sand. And so, yeah, Marlo Oaks is a great asset to Utah, and we're working on that.
Well, that's really exciting. I'm glad to see that you found somewhat of an ally, it looks like, and somebody that you can work with to continue to preserve the sovereignty of Utahns, which is critical. I love Utah. Go skiing there. I have family that live there, and I think it's a beautiful state, and the people are wonderful. There's a lot to love about Utah. In fact, there's a lot to love about all of America, and everybody should have that state pride, and it certainly seems that you do, and your family's heritage and history reflect that. You've got some events coming up next week. Riley Gaines, and you look like you're partnering. What's happening?
Yeah, so I've been trying to get Riley to come out for a little while, just because I have such respect for her. And the thing that stands out with Riley is she stood up at the moment that there was, a lie being told. I say she's the truth against which the lies were crashing, because she spoke immediately. She didn't go home and say, I'm going to write a letter. She took a stand right then. It's really courageous. And if you know Riley, you'll know that she's kind of a special, confident young woman. And in Utah, we had a bill that would have that would have prevented boys from competing in girls' high school sports, passed the legislature, but the governor vetoed it. We came back into session and got a veto-proof majority, so it's law now. But I want Riley to have the chance to come and tell the legislature, thank you for reconvening, passing that bill with a veto-proof majority and getting it into law, and then also just to inspire the other young people in Utah.
That's really, really wonderful. And I'm sure she's looking forward to joining you for that event and for that opportunity as well, because
18th and 19th of January. Yeah. So it's next
18th
week.
and 19th. And where will the event be?
18th at the University of Utah in Salt Lake, and then 19th down in St. George.
In St. George. Okay, fantastic.
Yeah.
All right. You've got a website, Lyman for Utah. It's on the lower third below. Just look below this broadcast. You'll find it there. It'll also be in our description box with the show notes if you're watching this on Rumble. So please, by all means, you can support Phil Lyman's candidacy for governor of Utah to stand back up sovereignty and bring saneness back to the citizens of Utah, which clearly have had their state raided by the other corporate raiders known as the Federal District of Corruption out of the federal government in Washington, D.C. I shake my head all the time. I can't believe we're watching this.
Yeah, I'm sitting in Washington, D.C. right now. So I've been here the last 3 days and flying out this afternoon. So yeah, it's a interesting place. A lot of power.
A lot of power. Just make sure you get the slime off you before you board the plane.
Yeah.
You don't want to bring that back to beautiful
Yeah.
state of Utah.
Yeah.
All right. Phil Lyman, running for governor of Utah. Congratulations on the campaign. Thank you so much for your service to the incredible people out in Utah. Your family's history is storied, and you should be very proud.
Thank you. Thanks, Ann.
All right.
My Towels solved a problem that we've all had with towels. You go into the stores and they feel lotiony and soft, but then you get them home and they wind dry you. That's why I made My Towels. They actually work, they're soft, and they absorb. And now I'm excited to announce 2 brand new lines of My Towels. What makes them the best towels ever is they're now made with 100% long staple Shapir cotton. This is a combed ring spun cotton that makes My Towels even softer and more absorbent than ever. And now you get a 6-piece set for an amazing introductory sale price as low as $29.98. So go to mypillow.com or call the number on your screen. Use your promo code to get My Towels for only $29.98. Or you can get my designer premium line for just $20 more. Either way, you save 50% now on all My Towels. They actually work. What a concept. This offer won't last long, so please order now.
mypillow.com.
Many of you have been asking, where am I getting the energy from? Where is the glow coming from? What's changed with your hair and skin? Well, simply in the last month, I started taking a product, C60 Evo. If you go to c60evo.com/Ann Vandersteel, you too can get radiant energy, mental focus with C60 Evo's ESS 60. What is it? That is pure C60. Get that increased flexibility, immunity, and longevity. And guess what, folks? It's not only for people too. You can get some for your pets. My animals are on it now. And that's right, I'm having trouble keeping up with Vegas, my dog, who I like to go on long walks with in the morning. He is battling back on the heat down here with his C60 Evo as well. Go to c60evo.com/Ann Vandersteel and try their delicious oils that you can eat and add into salads or put on your food, and also incredible facial serums and creams that are making a massive difference in the texture and feel of my skin. c60evo.com/Ann Vandersteel. All right, joining me now, Robert Green, Commander in the U.S. Navy, and an outspoken one at that, and the 10th signer on the Declaration of Military Accountability. Robert, great to see you, and thanks for joining me this evening.
Thank you very much. Honored to be here.
So, I asked you prior to hitting the record button for this pre-recorded interview if you needed to make any sort of declaratory statement that you're operating in your personal capacity and that you're not in uniform. To what you said?
Yeah. Well, I typically don't go that explicitly. It's pretty obvious that I don't speak for those who are breaking the law. And so I try to speak for the Constitution, and I try to speak for the people whose rights are being trampled.
Fair enough. Okay, which is really the whole reason for this declaration of military accountability, which you were one of the founders to get this ball of wax growing and rolling, I should say, because you are demanding accountability and you're looking to yourselves and your fellow men and women to actually extract accountability from those who have, quotes, authority, and those who actually perpetrated crimes against humanity, but primarily within your own rank and file, starting with Secretary of Defense Lloyd Austin, who I refer to as the demon, but that's my personal word for him. I'd like to get your perspective when you first heard about the COVID jab and they were going to start mandating it in the military. What was the first thing that crossed your mind, Rob?
Well, I had deep concerns with all the safety regulations and things that were completely dismissed. There were problems. There were problems with the way we saw the coercion being rolled out. And I refused. I refused very explicitly, intentionally, to never actually issue an order for anyone to be vaccinated or take an emergency use authorized product of any kind. And I made sure to try to protect those in my charge so that they did not have to perpetuate all of that. Ultimately, I was fired from my position, and that kind of got the ball rolling for me to go on the offensive. And everything I filed, it started with a mutiny complaint against, he was then my commander at the 4-star level, but now the vice chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, Admiral Grady. And so I filed a mutiny complaint against him. It was internal. I wrote about it in the book. And so they refused to do anything about it. They dismissed that complaint and 3 weeks later promoted him to be the vice chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff. So ever since then, as they have backed down, not addressed what I've done or written or complained, I've continued to step into the space that the bully had previously occupied. And that became a whistleblower to Congress report that we did, that became a book I wrote this past summer, and now finally this declaration and petition. And they continue to ignore us, so we're going to go on the offensive.
So let's take a quick pause, because you've actually plugged your book before I could even get to it, because the title, when I heard about it the other day, was so enticing. I ordered a copy myself, Defending the Constitution Behind Enemy Lines. I just love the title because I feel like we're all doing that right now. I feel like those of us that understand how our constitutional rights have been completely usurped, and frankly, the Constitution at this point has been set aside under yet another declaration of a national emergency and putting the Marburg pandemic into effect January 1 of this year, but declaring it back in November and December. I should say it was effectuated into the books December of 2020 in the Congressional Record, in the Federal Register. It's medical martial law all over again, and the people don't realize their constitutional rights have been suspended. Ergo, if you declare yourself part of the corporate structure in Washington, D.C., you are subject to mandates. I don't see myself as a corporate citizen. I'm a free people, so I'm not going to allow mandates subject me at all. So help us, walk us through this, defending this Constitution behind enemy lines. How do we help people understand exactly what is happening right now? Because people go, oh, the Constitution, but yet where is it? Why aren't we able to stand on it?
Right. That's a great question. So I think it's important to understand what the Constitution is and does. It establishes the form of our government, but more importantly, it establishes individual rights as having primacy. And so when we in the military and those in government service, and when they swear an oath to support and defend the Constitution against all enemies, foreign and domestic, that domestic part is really critical to understand, because those in the military, we train for the foreign issue, but domestic, we always thought of it as being a terrorist attack of some kind of police action would be required to defend. But what we've learned over the last few years is that the most insidious, the greatest domestic threat is actually the threat that tries to take away your natural and constitutional rights. That is the greatest threat that we face domestically. And so if you've sworn an oath to defend the Constitution against those threats, that obligates you to do whatever it takes to stand up for constitutional rights in order to fight the domestic element of that threat.
Right. And what we see right now is we see a bunch of Congressional Hill politicians. These aren't public servants. They are literally corporately bought and paid for politicians. And we've seen public-private partnership. That means, public office and private companies, or corporate public companies coming together like Pfizer, like the FDA and the CDC and the NIH, all working together and colluding to inject a bioweapon into millions of Americans' arms and billions around the world, frankly, with deleterious effects. Your own signer, Ed Macy, right? He was one of the Department of Medical Epidemiological Database whistleblowers. I interviewed his wife, Mara Macy, who's running for Congress up in the Jacksonville area of northern Florida. And she's disgusted in the lack of transparency. How do you all plan? Because we have to have a concerted effort, right? We have to have the people who have a civic duty. I feel like we've abandoned our oath, frankly, to, bestow and protect the law of the land, in addition to the fact that this is God's second covenant nation. Therefore, we have a responsibility to be righteous and defend our natural given, born rights. But we also are looking to you all to come at it from a different perspective and start to hold these other public servants, which are members of our military as well, accountable. What does this look like if you were going to plan the battlefield, right, for us to resume and restore our republic? How would you shape it? How would you create, strategies around the different pathways that people need to stay inside their lanes to execute this and restore our republic?
Well, it's important to realize that we've already placed some of that into effect now. But what we had been doing previously was just requesting someone else to do it, right? When we were going to our leadership, that's essentially going into the executive branch. We're all in the executive branch of the military, and we're requesting them to hold themselves accountable. That didn't work. So we went to Congress, and we tried to have them hold people accountable for breaking the law and make them do the right thing. And Congress was not able to get a consensus. There may have been only one or two people even willing to listen to us. So we went to the federal courts, and we started winning cases there, or not winning, but we started getting wins, injunctions, rulings that weren't final, but rulings that were on our side. And that's when Congress then rescinded the mandate and then gave the DOJ what they needed to go to all these courts where we were getting wins and get them to dismiss these cases as moot. So when you have all three branches use the word colluding, when you have all three branches appearing to make sure that justice could not be done here, there is no other option for us. We can't go back and keep requesting someone else come in and restore the rule of law. And so that means that we have to stand up and do this ourselves. And that's what we did with this declaration of military accountability. It's a pledge that we will ensure that folks are going to follow the law by holding those who broke the law accountable in every legal and moral and ethical way we can.
So you talk about court-martials. Walk us through what that procedure would look like, because I'm talking about from the people's perspective, standing up county citizen grand juries, where we then review the evidence based on COVID fraud, election fraud, and indict these public officials and use the state constitutional as well as U.S. constitutionally protected militia to back up these sheriffs for arrests so that we can hold them in an Article III court. In other words, turn that court of commerce, that admiralty court that is sitting in the county courthouse into an effective Article III common law court with a true jury of the indicted's peers, and allow the case to be tried by the county prosecutor, and put that public pressure on that prosecutor to indict based on what the county grand jury looked at as far as evidence and made those indictments and presented to the sheriff. So what does a court martial look like as it compares to what the people need to be doing on our side? And believe me, I'm working hard to get the people organized like this around the country.
Yeah, and I think we have parallel and adjacent goals here, certainly, with rallying the people. And so I'll speak to that in a second. But to answer your question, for the military side, it requires the authority to do so. We want to, these leaders, they make their decisions based on risk. All their decisions is risk analysis and risk mitigations that they put in place. But never before have they experienced personal risk for decisions that impact the First Amendment or any of the constitutional rights of service members. And so because of Ferris Doctrine, which does not allow service members to sue for wrongful death or bodily injury, and because of the deference paid by the court system to the DOD for things that they place under national security language, the military leaders have never been held personally liable or had any personal risk decisions that they had to make when they were making some of these decisions that they've made. So what we're doing with this declaration is we're saying that, in the past, you have not had to worry about any personal risk for decisions you've made in your official capacity. Well, now we are pledging to recall from retirement those leaders who have potentially broken the law. We're going to have investigations. We're going to make sure everything is done as it's supposed to be. But we're going to recall you. And so the law permits, within the Uniform Code of Military Justice, it is permitted to recall someone from retirement to do that. It requires the authority to do so. So this needs to be somebody at the secretary level, most likely. Secretary of the Army, the Navy, the Air Force.
Do you have the buy-in from somebody at the secretary level to do this recall?
What we have is the pledge from the service members and veterans that we're going to get there if we can. And so that's why in the declaration we talk about being a long-term time horizon project. I anticipate, if we can build consensus, and that's what I'm going to get to in a second, if we can build consensus, continue to train those who follow us, these people need to be looking over their shoulder for the rest of their natural lives, because that is what accountability looks like. You don't just get magically home free when you hit retirement and never have to worry again anymore. We're going to make sure that personal risk is going to be part of your calculus for the future decisions that you have to make, because I bet you unlawful orders are going to be coming down again. And so that's why this declaration is important. So they start to feel that there's pressure coming up from the people as well.
I love this. And you've articulated this so well, Robert. I'm thrilled to hear you say all of these things, because again, some people are just looking for a quick fix. God knows we all want it to be over yesterday, and we want people to be, dealt with according to the maximum of law, maximum penalty, frankly, whatever that is, for treason. And we know that includes death for some people. But I'm not advocating violence. I'm just advocating to follow the law here. You talked about the Department of Defense. And that, people have been able to hide behind the fact that they haven't had to be held personally responsible. The DoD is another for-profit agency. And let's face it, they've made the military industrial complex what it is today. And President Eisenhower warned us about this years ago, decades ago, that this would be the fate we would be challenged with at some point, and we should be warned about what's happening. And here we are. And warp speed was rolled up under DoD. In fact, medical martial law rolls up under DoD currently today. So knowing that we're dealing with a public for-profit agency of unelected bureaucrats that are, knowingly colluding with companies like Pfizer, they knew the data from these tests were bad and they covered it all up. It seem like this is a long arc, long trajectory, a long horizon before we're actually going to see accountability? How is it they can just get away with murder and maiming people, yet we have such a long, road to hoe before we can actually perhaps maybe get somebody arrested and or dealt with according to the maximum law?
So we didn't get into this problem overnight. It's been decades in the making. Slow encroachments into constitutional and natural rights. So we won't get out of this problem overnight either. It's going to take a while to get this back, to win our nation back. What we saw when we issued this declaration of military accountability, it was issued by Brad Miller. He was the one in our team who kind of took the flag and decided to plant it, and then he has been very vocal about that. So we talk about getting somebody into authority. He would be my recommendation for one of those secretary positions, or the Secretary of Defense someday. He's somebody I would trust to get this right.
Me too.
But what we saw from the people was something about this document resonated with them, and they wanted to get involved. We got so many messages from folks saying, how do I sign up? How do I join? What can I do to be part of this? I want to be part of the solution. And we weren't really prepared for the response that we got. And we ended up putting a website up overnight, basically, wrote a petition that all Americans can go in and sign and pledge to also do something similar and hold leadership accountable. And so that is the answer to your question about how we do this and how it's going to take a while. It's down to the people are going to have to mobilize and replace those in government who have broken the law and trampled rights. And when we do that and we get the right people into place, that is where we can put our own house in order and ensure that future generations know that you can never do this kind of thing again, because accountability will come from the people.
And it is, and we're seeing it. I mean, we're seeing humanity rise up. What happened in South America, down in Argentina, is nothing short of a miracle, except for the fact that they don't use machines. They actually use paper ballots. And the new president, Javier Milei, is proving to be quite interesting in terms of standing up and standing for the people, which is a beautiful thing, because again, you know, nobody died and made these dictators God. God is God, and the rest of us are his people. And we should all be treated with undue respect and have the same right to freedom around the world. But, you know, as it has been, America has always been that beacon. And unfortunately, at this point in time, she's not shining. She's on life support, if I might be so bold as to say so. Do you think that we will see resolution and that we'll actually start to see the restoration of our republic within our lifetimes? And if so, do you have a horizontal view in terms of time that you think we're going to start to turn this Titanic around?
Well, I would say that for many of us on the military side who have come together to write this, sign it, get it out there, and now communicate with the American people what this means and what we need to do next, the issue is less about outcomes. We care about the process. We care about making sure that we stick to what we believe, our First Amendment rights, our religious beliefs, what we intend to do for the nation. And what comes of that is it's going to be God's will. But we know that we are not going to be doing our part if we worry about outcomes, and that impacts our resolve to do what's right. So for us, we kind of are letting it go to whatever God allows to happen. We're in it for the whole ride. If it takes decades, if it, you know, it's my children's children that benefit from what we're trying to do here, then we're glad to have that happen. If we get this thing fixed in 4 or 8 years, then we're happy for that. But ultimately, it's about making sure we're doing the right thing in the moment.
Sure. All right. I want to talk about your book really quickly. Defending the Constitution Behind Enemy Lines, a story of hope for those who love liberty. Give us a little bit of a snapshot.
So I tried to tell in this book as little about myself as possible and as much about the stories of those heroes in the military who stood up to unlawfulness and coercion. I try to weave in each story, each chapter with a theme from something the founding fathers experienced. And so you see that throughout this book, we compare and contrast what happened before and what we're going through now. And we try to make sure that we show the American people with this book what it means to defend the Constitution, even if you feel like who you're defending it against are right there in front of you.
Well, that's a big, tall order, because I think we need, probably this should be required reading amongst every high schooler, at least. If not, if we could get this book into the hands of the younger generation, although maybe it's a little too sophisticated because perhaps civics has been eradicated from our educational system thanks to the Department of Education, another unconstitutional agency that should be extinguished quickly so that we can actually get education back into the hands of children and out of the corrupt, should we say, communists that plague Washington, D.C. What's next for you after the Navy?
I am not sure yet. Probably do my best Cincinnatus approach and go find a farm somewhere and continue to homeschool my kids and raise our own food. But we'll see. It's up to God. We'll see what happens.
Well, you know, you've done a marvelous job to date. I believe in our men and women in the military wholeheartedly. I know that we have an incredibly sad situation that has manifested itself in terms of the woke ideology, particularly at the leadership level. And thanks to Obama, the better leadership was removed and replaced. And it's a travesty what I see happening. However, I had almost given up hope until this declaration of military accountability surfaced. And I have good friends like Lieutenant Colonel Pete Chambers, who kept this completely under wraps. I knew nothing about it. I was so surprised to see it and so excited at the same time. I said, this is what America needs to see. We've been wondering where our military is, and this was the shot in the arm. So to that, I say thank you very much. I hope that if you were to resign or retire in the near future, that you would consider looking at tacticalcivics.com, because this is the component and the complement to helping get people on the ground mobilized in counties to get these citizen grand juries going, which is desperately needed to adjudicate the scourge, and the people who, like you said, we need to hold these public officials accountable. They should be looking over their shoulders every single minute going, God, I hope I can get away with it, but I don't think we're going to let them. At least I don't intend to allow them. So Robert Greene, you are a hero to me. Thank you so much for taking the time to do this interview.
Thank you very much for having me and for everything that you've been doing for our country.
You know what? Labor of love. And I'll be moving into a different direction. As I've told my audience, I'm now moving into doing documentaries and more magazine style shows where we can dive into topics like this more extensively and really inspire people to want to be a part of the process and the solution. And it's because of people like you that inspire so many millions around our country. We're very, very grateful. And I'd like to be able to, give you a bigger spotlight. So that is where I'm going to start to point my compass. So thank you so much for everything.
Very good. God bless you.
And again, I'd like to thank Hannah, Bob Denny, and the team at Brighteon Studios for giving me this incredible platform and doing a fantastic job with the production night after night. It has been truly an honor and a blessing to work with you. And I look forward to the future collaborations as we venture off into news magazines, where I'll be able to do a much more in-depth study on the topics and make sense of the madness and the chaos, but more importantly, bring you human interest stories, as well as help unravel the truth. After all, I've been saying on Twitter, 2024 is the year of exposure, and I look forward to delivering the truth with you. Thank you so much for tuning in, and we will see you again out there as we continue to bring you everything you need to know through the truth in journalism, right here, right now with me, Ann Vandersteel. Good night, everybody.